I need to know why you were crying.
It
Okay.
was a lot. It was very nostalgic. That's so much better. See,
Yay. Okay.
you didn't cry at all. All I did was cry.
I definitely cried. I definitely
Okay.
cried. But I probably didn't cry as much as I was thinking I was going to be crying because you were like, I'm crying through it all. And I was like,
There was
I
some parts I didn't cry, but like the beginning, I started crying because I'm like, oh my god. And then the middle, there was some parts that obviously made me cry. And then the end, when it was over, I cried because I'm just like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
I hear you.
Look at us.
So when you were like, oh, I'm going to be taking notes, I was like, bet.
There was when I first started it and I was watching, I was like thinking about like we should talk about this, and I was like I should take notes. And then when we really decided to talk about this, I was like, no, I'm taking notes. Like I need to write things down. I wrote down a lot. I got 4 pages.
Oh, damn.
Well, it's like my little papers.
Okay, okay. I wasn't taking notes. I was just the minute that you told me, I was watching Never Have I Ever while also working on a newsletter for my job.
Hmm.
So I literally was not really paying attention to the show, but really just paying attention to my computer. And so when you said that, I was like, shit. Like, how can I forget one? And two, I remember that we were gonna watch it together. And so I was
Hmm.
like, fuck, I need to go. And so I
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
don't even worry, don't even worry. I ended up my mom watching it with her, and then when you were like, okay, I'm taking notes, I was like, wait, mom, I'm gonna go get my notebook, we're gonna restart this again, and we're gonna start all over. She's like, are we really about to start it all over? I was like, yes. I'm taking notes.
Well, I want your mom's perspective too, or what you took from what your mom
She,
perspective.
well, first of all, I don't even think we've introduced.
So we didn't start yet. So let's act like we're starting and then we can get into it and
Okay,
basically introduce it all, right?
okay.
I'm gonna make you go first.
No, that's fine. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Iris, not just Iris, Eerees Iris. And
Oh, am I supposed to jump in? Hey, my name is Daphne Emily. This is so weird because it's Zoom, so it's like
no, I know it's not like we're right next to each other, but we
whatever.
are
We are
Soulful
Soulful
Chic.
She.
Hey.
Yeah. And Soulful She, I guess I'll jump into it. Soulful She, we are two bodacious beauties from Brockton. We're unraveling our truth on identity, mental health, empowerment, and fashion through conversations from the soul.
Girl, go ahead.
Yeah. I've been practicing.
Have
The
you really?
order of the four keeps changing, but I've been practicing.
They're all in there. um, but today we were gonna come together to discuss a very important documentary that just came out by Michelle Obama, and it is Becoming. And I also want to incorporate the book as well because there was some stuff that I ended up talking with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, I remember this from the book, and this and that, blah blah blah." So we'll be discussing our thoughts on Becoming, crying together, and just sharing how the experience was as a whole.
Right. And with Soulful She, it was kind of like last minute, like we have to talk about this. This is so who we are. So it was just like pause the documentary, get the notebook, start taking notes. And I really jotted down like a bunch of stuff that I resonated with. And then I also have two questions.
Ooh,
I mean,
I won't say no to that.
they're gonna be at the end, but I'll ask the questions now.
Okay,
Um, if
so
that's okay, can I do that?
yeah, yeah.
So
Are
the
we
first
answering them now, or are you asking them?
No, I'm asking them now, and then at the end, we'll come back to them again after we do the whirlwind of everything we're going to talk about. But I guess the first question, I got my notes. Um, so my first question was, if you can say one thing to Michelle Obama, what would you say?
Hmm.
And after us reflecting and going through this and us watching the documentary and remembering the book and everything, kind of like what would you say to her? And then the last one was the ending of the documentary. people basically say I am becoming, and then said, so I wrote down I am becoming, and then wrote down what came to me about who I'm becoming, and I hope you can also share, Iris.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I just want to throw that out there now, so things that are in the back of our minds. So as we go throughout this, we answer that at the end and break this down.
Yes, I'm for it. I'm for it. And if you see right at the end, I
You
was
wrote
like,
it.
do this.
I knew we would though. Same wavelength.
I love the space that she's taking. And as women of color, two bodacious, beautiful women of color, we are also taking space. And I think this is just the cherry on the Sunday cone about someone who is taking up space and leading by example, and therefore we continue that.
Yay. So I guess first things first, jumping into wanting to watch. I've been trying to watch the documentary all day and it kept not working. So when I finally started to watch it, I literally was in it. Like I pressed play and I was ready to cry.
Sheesh. Why? First of all, let's just, I want to like step back real quick and
Yes.
say the minute that Daphne texted me and was like, I'm crying, I was like, wait, what's going on? I don't know. Like, I didn't know if we were talking about something before and I had to know about like context clues or something. So I'm like, oh, why is she crying? And then you're like becoming, and I was just like, and I think you explained it a little bit. And I think when it ended, you were like, I'm crying. So I was like, I want to know what about this film had you in tears?
In the first few seconds before I watched anything, it was just more like the nostalgia of missing them and her and everything that like she represents for me. See, I'm ready to cry again.
Let them out. Let them out. So, what does Michelle Obama represent
Girl,
for
you
you?
really want me to cry. You ain't gotta ask that yet. Like,
Okay. I'll take it back. I'll take it back. I'll
okay,
take
okay. Let's work through this and maybe we can ask
I
that again and hopefully the tears chill.
okay.
I read the book and I didn't cry. I don't know what. I don't know what it is. I'm
I
not ashamed. Tears are beautiful.
I think I cried more with the book than with the film, because I think one thing that is different than books and film is that with a book the words are there, but you are creating that story, you are creating that imagery that you are holding on to, if that makes sense, versus a film you're watching something that someone else directed and
Right.
someone else created. So like I definitely will say with the book, while I was in bed or while I was, literally I caught myself in the train, like because I would read this book on my way to work and back to work, and I would catch myself in the train crying, and I'm just like like sitting next to random people, and I'm just like everything's okay. This is beautiful.
I think just visualizing it and kind of like when it came on the screen, it was just more like it's like a kind of like a closed chapter.
Hmm.
And then like watching it like play out how she kind of envisioned it and how they wanted to produce it, it was just really like bittersweet. Like watching, like it's already been the end. We've been in this, they're not in the White House, even though they're still the first family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like seeing it like that was just like, damn, like the book is closed. Like here's the vision of everything that happened and like the memories. Right, very nostalgic and just a lot of emotions. And I guess once we talk through the things we wrote down, then I'll remember half the reason why I wanted to cry.
I hear you. This you saying that reminds me in the film. I want to say it was Michelle Obama was leaving either a hotel and she had to wait for a certain time to be able to leave. And when she finally left, I thought that because she was going through the back, like nobody would know. But the minute they opened the door, everybody's like, like cheering for her. And then out of the crowd, you hear someone says, "We want you back." And I was
Oh,
just like,
really? Wow, you caught that?
yeah, yeah,
I need to
like,
watch again.
and I was just like, damn. Because the thing is, like, she and him and that family and just what they represent created this hope and created this vision and created this, like, I don't even know what the word is, that ignited in all of us of just like, yes, you know, they're taking up space. Yes, they are there. Yes, like they're amazing, and they made it, you know, in a space where in the film they say, you know, it's their White House, and they're referring to white people, and it was just like, you know, no, beautiful Black people are in the house and they're taking up space, and just hearing that person from the crowd say like, we want you back, it's like everybody says it, you know, not my president, you know, talking about Michelle Obama and still my president, whatever.
She's still the
uh,
forever first lady. So
basically, so like I definitely understand the nostalgia of just like when you were there, it was such good times, or just at least how we felt about them being there.
yeah, I have a lot of opinions throughout. So I just don't want to like start shelling things out because a lot of it's like
Just shell
written
it, shell it.
through.
Let
But I guess going through this and us jumping in, it's kind of, I mean, I'm just gonna start from what I started writing down on my notes
go ahead.
and then working our way through on what we saw in the documentary, and you're just gonna jump in too, and we're gonna make this as good as possible. But um I think one of the biggest things that I started off with was like, or something I've always respected about them as a family, her as being not only the first lady, but being herself, and basically the work that she's put through in her life to get where she's gone. Like, she's not just the first lady. Like, she
Yes.
has the credentials. She's done the work. Like, she grew up on the south side of Chicago, which was something that also had me ready to cry because I've always known this, never really phased me, but it was one of those things that you like, she's a girl from the hood essentially, right? She grew up well. She grew up with, you know, in home with her family, with her parents. She had her struggles, but she had an upbringing that like some might not say was too hard, or it doesn't look like it was too hard or whatever. But it does
Yeah.
remind me of growing up in like a city like Brockton, something that a city that's more urban, a city that is so diverse, but diverse to the point that the population is a lot more people of color than it is um, Caucasian people. And growing up in a way that I feel like I don't want to say I took for granted, but
Mhm.
I didn't appreciate it until I went into college and realized from college on the real world of what the world is like or what the US is like, and
Mhm.
being somewhere that's so predominantly people of color and going to a space where you're counting people in your classroom, which was never something that fazed me. So like seeing that and how she was raised in that, and how um, you know, she kind of goes over being from the south side of Chicago when they started moving in, people of color started moving in, Black people started moving in, white people got scared and decided we need to go to the suburbs. And you can see in the class pictures where
Yeah. Yeah.
there was always a majority of Black people, but the amount of white people. I mean, her eighth grade photo was like one white girl.
I didn't even
And
see. I didn't even notice.
I mean, I noticed because she was the only one. Like, she was sitting towards the front and she was the only one. And then everyone else was people of color. And I was just thinking to myself, like, that's how I kind of grew up. So her kind of going into Princeton and how she felt when she went to Princeton really related to how I felt going into um, the university that we went to. And I think that's where I started out. But there's a lot of things that come for that. So you can go ahead and jump in.
Oh yeah, definitely. I will say that while I was watching this, in the film, it during one of her interviews, what they had in the screen was Chicago in big letters. And I literally thought about you, just because you you describe yourself as a Black woman from Brockton, and she said it herself. She goes, I am from South Side Chicago, and you already know what that means. Like that on its own has its own definition. And I'm just like, Daphne comes out of anything or comes into anything saying, I am from Brockton, you know? So like you rep it like it is who you are, which it is who you are.
I'll
And
say it is who I am.
exactly. And she does the same thing. And so I was just like, I literally was like, Definitely it popped into my head when that happened, and I was just like, this is another reason why she's just amazing.
She's amazing. And going back to like the beginning and kind of talking about when she was in school, when she starts talking about her guidance counselor,
Oh, oh, oh,
and I feel like, oh,
oh.
you got notes too, right?
Yes, go ahead.
So so that I've heard a lot of people. So she's not the only person I've ever heard that have had teachers, adults, guidance counselors say you are not good enough for something. You are
Yeah.
not going to make it to college. You are not going to do more than this. Maybe you should consider a different path. And for me, I can't say per se I experienced that, but I can say that I feel like I was failed in a way,
Hmm.
because when I was in high school, not just in high school, in general growing up,
Mm-hmm.
I am a child of immigrant parents, raised mostly by a single mother. She barely spoke English. I mean, I was the firstborn here, so I was a translator since I was like 5.
Girl,
I had
I'm
to, as soon as I learned how to read, I had to translate healthcare letters, all these things. I had to explain since I was young all these things. But that reflected back to me being in school and feeling like I've had to do it all on my own and rely on the educators to teach me not only the basics of reading and math and the subjects, but the reality of life and things that work for you to succeed or do more. And I
yeah.
feel like one thing that pisses me off that I remember that I'm like half embarrassed, but then like it's my reality, was I didn't know what a GPA was until I was a senior in high school.
Wait, how? That defines who you are and what you're going to be.
I did not know. Like you would see it on the report card, but I didn't know how that reflected anything. I didn't know what my
Yeah.
GPA was or how it really amounted to the reality of where I could go to school. I didn't know. I knew you need to get good grades, but
Yeah.
even with the some not so good grades I got, I didn't realize how that affected me and my GPA. And it hit me in the face my senior year when I was applying to schools. I'm emotional today.
Gosh. I can only imagine.
I just feel like I don't know how it slipped by, how I didn't notice, which is like I feel like it's not really fair to put that on me because like I had to be taught it and I don't feel like I ignored it. So I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah.
And I remember there's one time in particular where I I got a D in a class that I know I did not deserve. I knew I did a great in that class. I was a very shy person even through high school, like even starting college, I was very shy. So I went to the teacher. He was cool, and I was just like, "Why did I get a D in your class?" And he was like, "Did you do such and such project?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did all of that. I mean, I remember the grades and everything." He was like, "Oh, just come to my office hours later. We'll just kind of go over it, and I'll just correct your grade." I never went
Why not?
because I was shy. I didn't think it mattered. I was like, "It is what it is." I got a D. I know I didn't deserve the D, but whatever. Had I knew, which I don't get how I seriously am in awe and how I didn't know. Like
Yeah.
I knew you're supposed to get good grades, but I just like whatever. I didn't know it really affected my GPA. If I knew, I wouldn't have let that slide whatsoever. I wouldn't have let that slide. So I feel like going on and trying to be on topic and like her going through them telling her she wasn't good enough or she couldn't do something. It's upsetting going to like I'm very proud of where I went to school. We have amazing educators. I feel like my guidance counselor kind of I had you since freshman year. I feel like that conversation couldn't have been had. Like we had a conversation about schools I want to go to, and I told her certain schools, and she told me straight up, I don't think you'll be able to go to those schools. But I just understood it as my grades maybe, but didn't know it was like a GPA, like there was a number. There was a scale system that was against me at this point because I didn't have the grades that added up to go to the schools I thought I could go to.
Yeah.
And I wasn't taught that, and it frustrates me till this day, because I had no clue until I was a senior. And literally it was one university that came to visit my school that we like could sit with, and they would go through your grades, whatever. And the lady's like a counselor from that university, and she's telling me straight up, like, you could probably get in here, and it's a state school.
Yeah.
She's like, you can probably get in here, but you would have to start off here because of your grades, such and such and such and such. That's when I was just like, hold up. So that's when I learned and really figured out, and was like,
So it wasn't even the guidance counselor. It was someone else that was visiting the school that like took
broke
the
down my GPA.
Wow. That's
I
crazy.
learned, I learned quick after that, but like it was too late.
Yeah, yeah. And it's crazy because the thing is, like, I don't want to put the blame or game or any of that jazz, but like I can only imagine, one, the things that you had to go through on your own that you had to take care of. Like there's the pyramid of I wish I knew what it was, but it was like basic needs, and then it like continues to go up, and once you get to the peak, like that's what you can be paying attention to. But
Right.
like thinking, if you don't have the basic needs met, you're not going to be paying attention to your grades. You're not going to be paying attention to like the other things that will affect what college you go to or where you go to, because you know, is your mother a English speaker, and is she on top of you for your homework because you just need to get it done, versus is she on top of you because she knows that you need to, you know, go into college, and because you need to know that there's a GPS. And like the guidance counselor, like there is, how many people is she speaking to students wise? So
A
like
lot.
exactly, so like does she have this little, you know, mindset of like, you know what, once your GPA is not good, I'm not even going to think about talking to you because it's going to be a waste of time. And just thinking about like those little things where it's like some of these people that don't either have the resources, have the time, or have the capacity to be able to help you in the ways that you really need to be helped, can really hurt you.
I can say my senior year, especially, there was such a break for me that was like, my guidance counselor I had her since freshman year, could only see her here and there. She loved me. She did. She wanted me to do certain activities and stuff like that she suggested for me. So that's why I never really realized my GPA, because I felt like I was doing enough. I was doing extracurricular activities. I was, in JROTC. I was the highest ranking my senior year. So everything seemed like I was doing it right, and just didn't realize that something that's like one of the most important things to get into school, or the important thing, was that, like, I knew I had to take my SATs and get a reasonable score. I knew all of that. Just, I don't know how that was missed. And then my senior year, she did become pregnant, so she had to leave. So
Sheesh.
that break and her leaving was what it was at that point.
Yeah.
And I just went hard my senior year. Like, I was on College Board's website every single day, researching schools. So like, it wasn't that I was not trying to do these things to get into school. It's just now I had to work with what I had alone also, because my parents had no clue. I literally did it all myself. But connecting it back to like kind of her talking about her guidance counselor and saying that, she wants to go to Princeton, her guidance counselor telling her, well, basically doubting her and telling her she thinks that's a far reach for her. I really like resonated with that, because I feel like so many people of color are kind of put into this box. My situation is kind of weird, but I also feel like we're put into the situation where the support that we should have, I feel like we lack in a lot of schools, in a lot of urban cities. And again, like you talked about the amount of people. I went to school with 4,000 students. My graduating class was 909. So I can't even, we had a lot of guidance counselors, but that doesn't mean we had enough to combat the amount of students we had there for them to be keeping track about our GPA and being on top of us. I remember my freshman year, my guidance counselor setting me up to take an art class. And I was like, this is before I got in touch with my creativity, but I was like, I can't draw. I do not want this class. And she's like, you should still try. You can't really fail that type of class. And I'm like, I do not want this class. She still gave it to me. I was like, fine. Took that class. My sister's then boyfriend was in the class, so I made him draw everything for me, which set me up for failure in the end. So I made him draw everything for me, and then they broke up.
Ooh.
So when they broke up, he cut me off. And now I'm in this class where the teacher has high expectations for me because I drew all these things.
Wait,
And
don't you try during class?
she won't pay attention.
Damn.
I would act like I was drawing something, and then the end of the day, I'd tell him this is what I'm doing, and then the next morning or the next time I had class, he'd like give me something.
Sheesh.
Um, so they broke up, and then my sister can draw. So I was like, well, you're drawing from here on out because you set me up for this. Um, but
You
the
said
thing,
no.
it was just so delayed with everything, and I got to the point that I was just so annoyed that I kind of gave up at the end. And there was one project I had to do that was like half my grade. Teacher told me like I have to do it or I'll fail, and I was just like, I'm not doing it. Again, not realizing how that F would affect me in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I remember the next year when the guidance counselor was going through my grades, she was like, "You really did fail it," and I was like, "I said I would. I said I would."
Damn, but you were doing so good in the other times that it like, but I guess percentages of like class.
I didn't give a damn. I
Yeah,
I didn't care about the F. I said I'm gonna fail. I didn't realize that the F would affect me. I didn't know. And even
yeah,
going through our grades, she didn't say that that would affect me.
yeah,
She didn't say like, this F lowers your GPA. Like maybe you should retake this.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
just like, oh, you really did fail it like you said you would.
That's the way. That's the way to talk. Yeah, yeah. I
But
feel like
yeah. Hmm.
I feel like that like reminds me of my guidance counselor. And I will say she was an amazing guidance counselor. But again, like I can imagine the 4,000 students that like these guidance counselors had to do, because in my high school, I honestly don't remember how many students there were, but I will say I did not have a strong relationship with my guidance counselor. And because I did not have like a strong relationship with my guidance counselor, I still loved her and still appreciated all the work that she was doing. I'm not taking that away from her at all. I remember that there was this there was this nonprofit organization that was coming to our school, and they're like, oh well, you have to be recommended by your guidance counselor. And I definitely did not get the invitation, and this reminds me of what she said. Michelle Obama said, of like, we can't afford to be invisible. She specifically said that, and she said that during the time when she was talking about her guidance counselor and about Princeton. And it's like, we cannot afford to be invisible, and we can't afford to be invisible because we need to take up that, like, we need to be going and doing the things that we need to do, and we need to believe in ourselves before anyone else can believe in us. Because if we don't, then, like, again, invisibility. So I remember, and I remember this memory till this day. The nonprofit organization was coming by, and like, the only thing that I heard about was that, oh, you get to travel the world. And I'm like, my mama don't got the money to be trying to be sending me to travel the world. So if this nonprofit is gonna get me to travel the world, my ass is getting there some way, shape, or form. And they're like, oh yeah, well, you need a recommendation from your guidance counselor. And I was like, you know what, I'm getting in that room somehow, some way,
Right.
shape, or form. I'm getting in that room with or without a guidance counselor's nomination. And so I like wiggled my way into that info session, and I ended up getting in, and I got into the nonprofit. But it just like reminded me that, again, we can't afford to be invisible, and we really need to be the ones that are taking that stride and saying, like, you know what, this is what I want for myself, knowing that, like, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what is out there, but getting yourself somewhere, shape, or form. And again, like, I don't want to belittle the guidance counselors, because i I even thought about being a guy. Yeah, I even thought about being a guidance counselor, because again, like, we need more guidance counselors in the school. I think we need more guidance counselors than we have, because guidance counselors can, if they really are able to concentrate on certain amount of students, can really affect where and when and how you move, in the school. So I was just like, when she said you can't afford to be invisible, I thought about that story and I was like, yeah, yeah, because if I wouldn't have done that and I wouldn't have gone into that program, I personally will say I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Right. I think to kind of attest to like my guidance counselor, she's one of the people that I can remember the most from high school. So she was a good person to me. I feel like that lacked, but I can't speak down to who she was for me and kind of helping me with other opportunities. Um, but it's interesting because being women of color, being people of color, and how we're being children of immigrants, we're raised in a way that one, the oldest ones, me and you, basically we both fit that mold, have to learn a lot on our own. We learn things from home, but in particularly my situation, my mom worked all the time. I've had family members here and there that can help out, but it's not the same. So there's things that could have been instilled at home to help with school, but it wasn't because the opportunity wasn't there, and because my mom had to work and it's life. I have no complaints because I'm the person I am today. But I feel like a lot of what I could have had more background in was missed out in having the opportunity, and being people of color and having that kind of background is, we don't have the resources of having like someone at home to kind of sit with us and do our homework. Or even if I had the opportunity for my mom to sit with me and do my homework with me, I'd have to translate it to her.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm translating something I don't understand. I remember one time I was struggling with decimals, I think in fourth grade or before that. And I literally had to talk to my godfather on the phone that was living in Florida for him to try to help explain how to multiply decimals, something like that.
Yeah.
Clearly didn't learn anything regardless, but I remember having to do that because my mom just didn't know what to do. On top of her education also didn't span out because where she's coming from, she went to school to a certain point. Um, but she did her best. My family did their best. I mean, I think I turned out pretty smart myself. But one thing that after she talks about, going through that process and being like, I'm going to Princeton and getting into Princeton, something that really stuck with me was her basically one, standing out in college, being a, from a very black city and going to a school that is not very black at all.
Yeah.
Something we both have a lot of experience with and had a lot of things and situations happen, and kind of a lot of things you learn about the real world we learned in college, because that reality of being the only person of color in the room started there for me. So I learned a lot that when one thing that was funny, I guess, about college, it's so sad to say, but it was funny, was first day of classes counting how many black people were in the class.
I feel like every first day of class.
Yeah, and you, or like people of color or someone that like can relate to you. So like I can remember always doing that, and odds are it was me and another person, or just me being that person of color. um I had interesting classes and interesting situations with that. So learning the real world in that way, which she talked about, basically coming from that kind of background and going to school that's predominantly white and being like, whoa, this is not the reality I knew. Like,
Yeah.
this is not how I saw the world, and like, this is the world all of a sudden, and this is the real world.
Seriously. We were privileged in that sense, I will say, because I uh, completely agree with you, because I too came from a middle school and high school and elementary school. Wow, like throughout my whole entire education before college, um, the minority were white people.
Yeah.
And so I will agree, like stepping into the university that you and I both went to, like it was definitely a culture shock.
I mean, my mom's friend that, like, I said I was going to go to this school. She was kind of like, no, don't do it. Like, people there can be really racist. And I'm like, that school's 15 minutes away from Brockton. there's no way it's that different. I'm like, I get it, like racism exists, you know, at that point, like I don't know, like I know racism exists, but I don't know the extent because I lived again a very diverse life
Yeah.
that I was like, okay, you're being dramatic, and being like, it's literally bordering the city I come from, like there's no way it's that different.
Yeah.
Oh man, reality checked in real quick, real fast. The day I moved into school was when reality really checked in. When I had
Yeah.
to move in and live with two other Caucasian females, um, and their families, moving them in, and the luxury of them being all set up and everything perfect, and me coming in and basically being like, this is already in use. This is what we left for you.
Sheesh.
Anywho, but then what made me kind of laugh when she talks about getting into Princeton and being there and being, you know, a minority now. Now I'm the reality of this country and I'm a minority in this school, but she talks about affirmative action and how
Hmm.
these these Caucasian men ain't that smart. Like they're not that smart. I'm smart. Like they don't know this. And when she kind of talks about that, it made me laugh a little bit because of experiences I had in college. But when she breaks down affirmative action in the sense of this country has this view of how, you know, people of color get into these positions or get into these Ivy League schools or these top schools because they need to fill a quota,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they make affirmative action seem like this is affirmative action, getting the Black people, the people of color, into these little spaces, these little pockets, to basically say, one, it's for everyone,
Yeah.
this is for everyone, but we have to fill this quota so we don't get in trouble with the government.
Yeah.
But you're only here because you're filling in a seat, not because you deserve to be here. But then she breaks down basically, no, affirmative action is also the legacy kids, the kids that come from money and their families come from that school, and it's a lineage of a connection with that university,
Yeah.
where that is a form of affirmative action where you're kind of just getting in here because mommy and daddy and grandpa and great grandpa whatever set up before you, and whatever funds they've offered the school, and this is why you're here. And
Because we.
also athletes, and how a lot of these schools want the top players into their schools because they want the wins. They want the wins because with those wins comes funding, comes money, comes popularity.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
she breaks that down, how affirmative action is not just a Black person filling in a seat, it made me like, one, like, can you let them know, like, you worked hard to be there, you deserve to be here, and like let's call out the people that are here because they have the opportunity in a way, and not
Mm,
taking away from athletes that work their butts off to get to those places. A lot of them do deserve to be there because they're smart, and it's not taking away from that. And for legacy kids, I mean, you're smart too.
there's
Some
there's some we don't
Give
know.
some of
But
them credit. We won't take away from everybody. We're gonna say that everyone has a seat at the table, not fairly, but we'll give some people some credit. So when
yeah.
she talks about that, I really kind of got excited and I started laughing a little bit because I was like, yeah, that's funny.
No, I completely when she said that, I was like, damn, but that's true, because like you're telling me that affirmative action is here because you need a certain amount of people or a certain amount of us in this space, but you also need a certain amount of those people in that space too. So I was just like, bro, yes. Like, yes, they just want to sugarcoat it and name it this way so that, like, I
You
don't
want
know
to
if
blame
feel.
somebody for their failures.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, I was like, damn, okay then. But then it also reminds me, like you said, you know, really sitting down with some of the people in the classroom. Like, I remember sitting down with people in the classroom um and just sitting next to someone that's like, oh yeah, like, I'm gonna be partying and I'm gonna be doing this, and I'll get what I get, or I just have to um bullshit something up and basically plagiarize, and like, I'll cruise through this and I'll be fine. And I'm just like, the amount of pressure. Like, I remember at one point just thinking about affirmative action, but also thinking about the film, um, they highlight one of the students. They highlight one of the students, and I want to say it's the first student, who happens to be also from Chicago, was a Mexican young woman, um, and she said a
Elizabeth.
line. Thank you.
How about
She
that?
said a line that she goes, it was like something along the lines of, um, graduating from high school is important for my family. She didn't say for her. She said
Right.
for my family, because it's like the amount of pressure that people of color are given to succeed, um, is just crazy. And the amount of things that the amount of hurdles that need to be done to get to where you're at is crazy. And then it just makes you think, like, you are jumping hoops, you are doing these things, and sometimes not even for yourself, but because your family is expecting you to do it, or your family is just like, you have no other option.
This is the
and
only
then you,
way.
and then you go to sit down in a classroom that you've been fighting for, and you've been given so many obstacles to get there, and then sitting next to someone that's like, you know, I'm a bullshit through this, I'm gonna be I. I'm
Right.
just it's just like, how is it that we're out here fighting, and you're just like, yeah, I'm good.
And it's just that umbrella of us fighting trickles down in so many ways, because it's like we're not only fighting to be here and working hard and working twice as hard just to be considered, but we also come from families that don't have the money to always pay for everything. So we also have to get these grades to get funding, or keep these loans and keep these grants going, because if we don't keep these grades, we lose all of this, with people that don't have to think about that, because the parents are already going to cut the check. So like, even if I fail this class, it's not coming out of my pocket. But we can't fail this class, because one, we lose money that we need for the school, and that's money wasted. Because if you really think about it, you're paying money for that class, and if you fail it, you have to retake it. That means you wasted thousands of dollars. So it's a lot that goes into the fact that we have to do so much and stay on point all the time, because if we take a left, or like a wrong step, we
Mm-hmm.
can lose a lot in the process.
Yeah.
Um, but something that, when she was talking about standing out in college and like these this guy being just dumb, it made me laugh, because I had an experience in a class where we were talking out loud and we had to do groups, and every group, there's three groups, we had one article to read, but at the end the professor asked us each to say basically what was the point of the article. Now the
Yeah.
article was talking about basically laws and regulations on firearms, on guns, and laws and regulations on stuffed animals, teddy bears, and how there are so many more regulations on a teddy bear coming out than there are in people being able to purchase a firearm.
Yeah.
So every group is basically saying that's the point, how the fact that it's just so contradictory that we have so many regulations for a toy, that we don't have these regulations on something that kills people. Like, the point of it is to kill. The point of a gun is to kill. There's
Yeah.
no other point of a gun. The point is to kill. That's the goal. Unlike a teddy bear, that's just a teddy bear. So everybody's saying that, and then we come to my group.
Let me get my tea.
Now I'm in this group with my best friend, and she's a million times smarter than me. So me and her are there. We didn't even want to talk with this group, because we already have experience in this class where we just don't mess with these people, because like, we're just so much smarter than everyone in this class. I mean, we were. I'm gonna call it like, there was things that went in that class that I just wasn't on. But this particular situation was, one of the girls in the group answers the question. Now, we're the third group to answer. We all read the same article. If you didn't want to fucking read it, listen to everybody's answer and bullshit if you have to. She answered something completely different than the actual point of this article.
And this is a group member of yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
And literally, me and my best friend looked at each other. This girl's mid-sentence talking whatever nonsense. Me and my best friend looked at each other, and we just jumped in and answered. Like, we just was like, no. Like, no. And then we answered the question, because literally we were in awe on how oblivious this Caucasian female was. And I'm gonna call it because that's what it was. And me and my best friend were actually the only two people of color in this class, and
Mhm.
just like in awe of the fact that like we cannot let this answer stand. Like we cannot let this represent us. Like this is not who we are. We are smarter than that. Like this is not gonna happen.
Mhm.
In general, in that class, I'm grateful for the education I had. Besides the GPA thing, I had an amazing education. I learned how to write really well. Because in that class, man, the writing skills these people had, I was just in awe. And, it's something I can't take for granted because I had the education to instill that writing in me because there's people that were in college that just couldn't write an essay for anything. And I guess circumstances set them up for that, so I can't call them stupid on that. But when I was in that class, I realized how much work we had actually instilled in us, and we had to do for ourselves to actually do well in that class, instill it on the fact that we were in the same class and they were oblivious. So her talking about how she's like, damn, he's stupid. I was just like, girl, I know. I feel you. I've been in that room before. You just look at someone, you're just like, is this real life? I work so hard to be in the same room with you? And that sounds really harsh, but that's how I
Hey, listen, we're taking up this time and we're being truthful and saying it how it is. Um, and I I just remember reading her books. And, I mean, books. Hopefully, she comes out with
feel. Oh,
more.
she will.
But reading her book and also thinking about that, I'm just like, I'm I know that everything that has happened thus far is for a reason. And so knowing that even with these battles, like our 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 identity and the things that we have done bring value to who we are and what we will be paving for the future, just the same way that she's been paving for the future. um but I wanted to, as you were saying that, I reminded me of like a couple minutes later after she was talking about college, she started to get interviewed and started talking about law school, and what happened during the time when she jumped from, college to masters to a law firm. And when she decided not decided when she had to mentor this young black man, and I remember in one of the interviews she was like, I felt the heat from the phone coming off of my
I was like, whew, I bet.
and I'm just like, that's crazy, because like she literally was saying that even before she met him, one, and two, even before like understanding that she was a mentor, like that still gets me. But I still love the story because they're breaking a barrier of just like, there isn't a right way of loving.
Right.
um
Oh, you want to get
and
into the love part.
Mm. And so I just loved the fact that, because I also saw Southside with you, very beautiful film, and I will say the film score I love. I literally listen to it just as is, but just thinking about how she was she she was a top dog. Like, he obviously is amazing, he's a president, but like she was holding her own,
Her
she was
resume stands
strong.
by itself.
Exactly. And it was just like, it wasn't that she was coming over here because she wanted to be completed, or she was coming over here because like, oh, he's this amazing man. It was like she was doing her thing. She was a boss ass bitch.
It's like,
I
let
don't
me teach you. From
exactly. And so it was just very interesting when I heard that story. Like, I was not expecting that at all.
it's so funny to kind of see her swoon for her man and kind of see her like still kind of remembering that first conversation, but knowing that the circumstances in which they met, like she was the boss in the situation. Like she was straight. She went to Princeton. She went to Harvard. Now she's in a law firm, and I'm mentoring you because I'm that person. Like I've worked to be there. instilling in me and trusting in me to mentor you.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I myself, she's carrying herself. Michelle Obama herself was carrying the fact that I got here. Let me teach you something.
Basically.
Um, but I kind of want to bring up Elizabeth again, uh, the high schooler.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I wrote her down too. And the reason I wrote her down was that question that came up, why me?
Mm.
And I think as a woman of color, I think a lot of us or most of us have asked that question when we've been in certain rooms. Like,
Yes.
why am I deserving of being here? Why am I picked to be here?
Girl, I need my glasses. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
But basically, that question that came up is a question I've asked myself many times, and it's happened throughout my life, not just in college, not just in high school, but even till this day, there are situations that come up, and I'm just like, why am I deserving of something? And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to bring up Elizabeth because she was basically talking about why am I here? Like, why did I deserve to be here? But then she talks about how she works after school and she's only part of one group, but she's a part of Latinos Unidos. And she's talking about, why does she have to work? I have to work because my father got in a car accident or my father got into an accident in which he can't work. So
Mm-hmm.
I know if I work, it will make things better and make him happy. Also, I have little brothers. I have three little brothers that I do everything for. I do this for them.
Yeah.
And when she's telling that story, it's one of those things that it's like I'm not the valedictorian. I'm not in a million groups. I'm not on a varsity sport. I'm not doing all these things to look right for a college.
Yeah.
So why am I in this space? And then when Michelle is basically like, your story, and she's basically like, and you're asking why you're in this room? Like, do
Yeah.
you not hear yourself? And
Yeah.
it made me really proud because again, I'm not one, like, even going back to the GPA thing, I've never been one to check off numbers to fit into a situation. I've always maybe should have done that, but I've never been one that's been like, I need to do this, I need to do that. Like, this is the right way to do everything. Of
Yeah.
course, there's things that you do to try to get the job, to get into the working field, but I've never been one that's been like, why am I here? Because all these numbers that I don't check off.
Yeah.
But when she basically clarified that, like, your story is why you deserve to be here, made me really proud and happy for her. One, because you work really hard. And again, a woman of color, a person of color working really, really hard at a young age,
Mm-hmm.
very mature, and doing all this work for her family, not even just for herself. Like, she can't be a teenager. Like, she's a teenager, but she's doing non-teenager things.
Yeah.
Um, but her story has her in that room, and it made me really excited and proud for her, and kind of proud of myself because, again, being a woman of color and the way I was raised and having my story, a lot of, I mean, the reason why I am who I am and how hard I work and where I've gone and things that I've done is because of how I was raised in my story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that resonated with me because I was just like, I could see myself in that shoes, and like I looked at the girl and I kind of felt bad because I'm like, I just kind of wish our people can just be kids and
Yeah.
like enjoy not having to worry about those things. Of course, we want them to work hard, but the fact that she has to worry about something like that made me sad for her, but also proud that like she's very hardworking and she's already set up to do great things because she's learned a lot of hard lessons.
Yeah.
But I had to shout her out because I was just like, go ahead, girl.
No, yeah, definitely. I think I think it's not just only being a woman of color, but like you mentioned before, being a first child is a huge important thing to acknowledge, where it's like these are parents that are really might not even know what it means to have a child again because they haven't had the child. So you are their experiment of life, of trying to figure things out and trying to understand what it means to have a child. And so not everybody, like it always says, there isn't a book that says this is how you do your this is how you have children, this is how you be a parent. But on top of that, knowing that a lot of the times our parents were didn't even have their shit together, so it's just like, one, you probably are still trying to figure out life, you're still trying to figure out what it means to be yourself, and on top of that you're going to have a child, and on top of that, if you're an immigrant, how many like obstacles do you have to face to be able to survive and to be able to live? So it's just like being a woman of color, being a person of color, being a first child, and on top of that, knowing that like because you are the first, there are ways that you need to be, and just things that are going to be put on your plate that you are not ready for, nor are you prepared for, but you have to be, and you have to,
You're not
figure it
given
out.
a choice.
Basically, so it's just like knowing and hearing, and yeah, I definitely enjoyed her story, but also see that very like see it a lot in many of us.
Speaking.
Okay, perfect.
So now
So
you.
everyone, my name is Eerees Iris.
And I am Daphne Emily, and we are Soulful She. Thanks so much for joining us.
And don't forget to come back for part 2. And as we always say, he can listen, they can listen, but at the end of the day, she is speaking.
And ultimately, we might be one more drop in the ocean, but we just might be that last sip to quench your thirst.
Mm.